Jeffrey Hinton won a Nobel
Sorry,
Prize.
you're a bit choppy right now. Could you just repeat that?
Jeffrey Hinton won a Nobel Prize.
Okay, that's good to know.
He's important.
All right.
People call him the Nobel King of AI.
Oh, really? Is he the one who made all the AI, the development through AI?
Yes, he invented AI. So, Chris, this week, Geoffrey Hinton, friend of the show, won a Nobel Prize, confirming that he is still very relevant.
Yeah, do these things just get handed out like confetti now? Just any old person who wages a campaign of relevance gets one.
The funniest meme about this was posted on X. It's from that movie where it's like, look at me, I am the captain now, except it says, look at me, I am the physicist now. So for those that are unaware, Geoffrey Hinton is, I think he titled himself, no, I'm sure someone else titled him, the godfather of AI, and he won the Nobel Prize, one half of the physics Nobel Prize, I should say, for foundational discoveries and inventions that enable machine learning with artificial neural networks. And at the same time, he said in multiple interviews he's currently busy getting his affairs in order because he thinks AI will soon kill us all.
Did he seriously say that?
Yeah, that's like fully legit.
Because, as you know, I spent most of the week making a song, which we're going to play at the end of the podcast that's dedicated to Geoffrey Hinton. So skip ahead if you want to hear that song. It's like I actually discussed seriously with Mike just making this week's podcast that song on repeat, and he actually considered it, right?
Chris is so excited about this song. The expectations are very high. We're going to play it at the end.
The reason, I'll say it now because I won't get a chance at the end. The reason I'm so excited about the song is it really just captures Hinton in general. Like, let's face it, he really did invent amazing stuff. Like, I'm not saying he's not deserving of the prize or anything like that. I just think that he's a little bit of a guy who does revisionist history where he's trying to rewrite things to be much more dramatic, like a sort of Beautiful Mind style movie. When in reality, he was doing his job. He was bloody good at it. He invented something, right? And so the song, and then this sort of doomerism, like, oh, the AI is going to destroy the world, is like a way of him inflating the providence of what he's created, right? And so I think what the song captures is this idea that he's invented this thing that's changing the world. He's proud of that, but also he thinks it will kill us all. And it's just this real dichotomy of celebration and destruction that we've tried to capture in a Backstreet Boys-like song.
So also, if you head over to thisdayinAImerch.com, you can still buy the limited edition red hoodie that says still relevant on it, which is in tribute to Nobel Prize winner Geoffrey
Limited
Hinton.
to how many we can sell.
Yeah, I don't even think we've sold one, but we never promoted them. So or they just never came. I'm not sure.
And there's
It's one
rumors
or the
our
other.
merch store is a scam as well.
We started those rumors.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's interesting. I think that partly at first I was like, look, his campaign of propaganda has been successful. He's put himself out there, done enough interviews. AI is a very popular topic at the moment, and he's sort of bought his way into this award. But then you pointed out, and I kind of agree, that really the stuff that he made has led to what we're experiencing now, which in some industries is actually having a genuinely profound and good effect.
Yeah, and also the co-founder of Google DeepMind won the Nobel Prize for chemistry. So AI is on a total win streak here, and that was for AlphaFold, which I don't really fully understand.
But is he like in the lab with test tubes putting like AI chips into, explosions or whatever? Or like, I don't understand how chemistry relates.
No, well, I think the prize is for contributions to that science. So it's saying because all these researchers or chemists are now using AlphaFold to make new discoveries of proteins or something, that was his contributed to chemistry. I can never say his name. Hang on a minute. I'm just going to ask someone.
Michael, how can I make your morning a bit brighter?
Yeah, cool. Cut the small talk. I just need to know the the name of the co-founder or founder of Google DeepMind. I think it's Demis Hazzabas.
Yeah, It's Demis Hassabis.
There, that guy. He's the guy that won the chemistry prize. So pretty exciting that AI is so relevant now, and also helping make the Nobel Prize relevant again thanks to AI.
Came out of nowhere. It's not something I follow like it's my favorite sporting team, but it is really interesting to see it get such strong recognition like that.
So, Chris, what did you make of this response from Geoffrey Hinton during his Nobel Prize interview?
I'd also like to acknowledge my students. I was particularly fortunate to have many very clever students, much cleverer than me, who actually made things work. They've gone on to do great things. I'm particularly proud of the fact that one of my students fired Sam Altman. And I think I better leave it there and leave it for questions.
What?
Yeah, the whole thing is just a little bit bitter, like as in like why use that opportunity to call out this specific person in such a negative way, especially when you have to argue that if not for Sam Altman, the rise of OpenAI might not have been as swift or as large, and that Geoffrey Hinton has directly benefited from that with this Nobel Prize. There is no way he would have the Nobel Prize today if not for OpenAI.
No,
And
it's
yes,
like OpenAI made Geoffrey Hinton's work relevant, and because AI is relevant, now Geoffrey Hinton is relevant, and therefore the Nobel Prize becomes relevant by making Geoffrey Hinton the Nobel Prize winner.
Exactly. And he could have said, like, I'm really proud of my student Ilya because he has made an absolutely astounding contribution in commercializing this technology and making it something that is being used across industries around the world and changing the world and being a topic of conversation everywhere. Like, he could have been so much more positive, but instead he uses it to have a dig at someone indirectly like that. I just don't understand the bitterness.
So you might remember last week we said to everyone we were going to really test out OpenAI's Realtime API, in particular the voice capabilities, to try and make real phone-type agent experiences to make our lives easier. And I thought because Geoffrey Hinton was getting his affairs in order, we, because we're so busy, would get some of our affairs in order. And you told me you had to make was it a doctor's appointment that you needed to book?
Doctor's appointment, very urgent.
Yeah, and so we thought to do that, we would test out the new phone calling skill that is coming soon to simtheory.ai. So if you haven't joined SimTheory yet, simtheory.ai, and you'll soon have access to the new phone calling skill where you can get the AI to make calls on your behalf. So we've obviously been testing this out. Now, we haven't really landed on what provider or how we're going to make this fully work. So we wanted to actually test the real-time API voice capabilities as part of this test. So can you explain sort of how we set this up in the sense of we want to call a doctor's surgery to get this appointment done, like what went into the prompt and just your experience using the real-time API to start?
Yeah, so all of them work roughly the same way where you can either there's certain providers out there that'll just let you provide a prompt and then they'll work with OpenAI or one of the models to run the entire call for you. That's obviously not suitable for our purposes because we want our users to be able to completely configure what goes into it, to be able to refer to grounded knowledge, to understand the context within which they're calling and all that. So we need control. And so the way it works is essentially you will get audio fragments from the call or transcript fragments from the call, depending on the model. And then you can use those fragments to then prompt the model and get a response. So in OpenAI's case, that's done with voice fragments. In the other models' case, it's done with a sort of on-the-fly transcription of what the other person says. You then run it through the model the way you would in a normal chat scenario, then produce audio with text to speech using one of the major providers out there like 11 Labs, OpenAI Voices themselves, or Microsoft has a provider for text to speech as well. There's lots of different ones. And using that, you can either use predefined voices or clone voices. You then play that audio clip back. So if you're using a service like Twilio for the telephone component, you would send the bytes back and then Twilio will play it on the phone. And then as far as that person's concerned, they're talking to someone on the phone. And we've discussed this before, but because of the sort of inherent low fidelity nature of a phone call, you can get away with a lot in terms of delays, in terms of mistakes, in terms of the voice not sounding quite right, because through a phone, people are used to having issues on the phone. So we've just found in our experience, you can sort of get away with it. So for the OpenAI one, we set it up with their real-time voice API and Twilio as a sort of interactive call. And then we used other variations that we made ourselves using different providers for the sim theory experiments. And I know you've got some we recorded to show the difference in quality.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Some of them we've listened to the recordings of. Some we're going to react to live, so we've never heard them. All we know is they're long enough to be interesting.
Yeah, we wanted true reactions to them, and we deliberately put some controversial side challenges into the call. So the primary goal of each of the calls is to make an appointment, right? That's objective number one. Objective number two is a side project. I don't know if we should reveal what that side project is or not.
Let's not let. I think with the first one, you're gonna have to reveal the. So when booking the doctor's appointment, you wanted one of the side quests to be that it had to mention what you were booking for, like what the problem was.
That I sustained an inverted nipple during a particularly emotional scene in the play Hamilton.
Like what cracks me up about this is like we were trying to book a real appointment for real,
and I insisted that we use our real doctors. So like in this example, this is my actual doctor that I go to on a regular basis. And then a secondary one that I've also been to in the past. So we really try with these things to go high risk. And it actually sort of brought out the nature of the difference with prompting in the real world like this, where you can't, like in a chat scenario, like if I'm working with an agent on a problem, I understand it makes mistakes. I can work within that framework and correct it and whatever. But when you're doing something like this, you can potentially destroy a relationship permanently. Like there is no going back. Like if you stuff this up and they realize it's AI and they realize that it's not authentic or whatever, that's it. You don't get another shot at it. And I actually proved this by accidentally calling the same place twice in a row. She's like, but you just called me and told me that your dog is a pig. Like, she remembers. She's got a knowledge graph. And so you can't afford to make a mistake. So prompt crafting when it comes to calls and things like this in the real world needs to be right the first time. Which is why we had to go high risk.
So let's play our first call, which was what we consider didn't go very well. So this is an example of using the real-time voice API and not so great outcome.
Thank you for holding. How can I help you?
Hello. I
Hello?
need to book an appointment. It's for an inverted nipple. Yes, hello. I'd like to book an appointment. It's for an inverted nipple.
Okay, so they hung up. It sounds
Understandably
completely
so.
fake. And just for listeners that don't understand the choices we have when it comes to OpenAI's real-time voice API, the voices clearly are designed to be voice assistants for the use case of like Siri almost. So I think on a phone call, they don't sound like there's no realism. Like it sounds like you're calling a call center.
Yeah, it sounds completely fake, like a company would record for a pre-recorded emergency message or something. It's not. Yeah.
I think it's important to know, you might think with that that's good because people recognize it's an AI and therefore, whatever it is. But I think for agents to be able to get work done in the real world, they need to integrate with our world really well. Like I think having a realistic voice and saying, oh, by the way, I'm Chris Sharkey's digital twin or AI agent, that seemingly will work a lot better, especially if it just clones your own voice. So it sort of is representing you, right? Rather than just this sort of generic voice that would just, like, if you were accepting these calls, you would get the same voice over and over and be like, oh God, another digital assistant, kill me.
Yeah, there's very limited range when it comes to the OpenAI voices, and I find them to be the worst of what's out there in terms of quality. I mean, I understand, like you say, they've designed them for a different purpose, but one of the other things I noticed with the real-time voice-to-voice API is it just isn't as strong as a model in terms of instruction following, for example. So these prompts we crafted over several iterations, we tested on ourselves to make sure they were capable of, even with the silly stuff in there, that they were fully capable of navigating the scenario given, right? So if you use GPT-4o, no worries at all. It can navigate the scenario perfectly, even because when I tested on you, you deliberately put it on hold, made it wait, asked for additional information and did things to mess it up. And it was perfectly fine with that. The same with Claude Sonnet 3.5. No worries at all. Didn't have a problem. Even GPT-4o Mini seems to handle it just fine. But the second you go to this voice-to-voice API, it just will relentlessly repeat the same thing over and over again, or completely miss entire instructions that were in the prompt. And so going back to what I said earlier, it makes it totally unsuitable for purpose because you can't trust it to have that dynamic agentic like behavior you would expect, where the whole idea of using this over a series of pre-recorded messages is it can react to the situation it's in. But the OpenAI voice to voice one in this experience just seems to completely incapable of doing that.
Yeah, and I think one other point is just the fakeness of the voice is unsettling to the other person on the other end. So
yeah, like they're immediately got their back up, like something's going on here, something's fishy. Whereas the other callers will hear, the ones I've heard at least, they only think it's fishy when it says something truly, truly weird and bizarre, as long as they stick to the actual topic. Like I did several where I was like, oh, whoops, I've accidentally really made an appointment here. I need to immediately call back and cancel because it was so convincing. It just worked. Whereas with this one, there was none of that, not even close. So even when it was doing the serious stuff.
Let's listen to another one where we're using the phone calling skill that'll soon be out on Sim Theory. And in this example, I've cloned my own voice. I use my own voice to clone this. So you'll hear a version of my voice as like a digital twin actually acting on my behalf. So let's listen to that. This one is sort of successful, except she misinterprets the name.
Speaking.
Hello, this is Chris Sharkey.
Hello, how can I help?
I need an appointment, please.
Okay, anyone in particular?
Any doctor is fine.
All right, 11 o'clock?
Perfect, thank you.
Chris Sharkey, is it?
It's Chris Sharkey.
Chris Sharpie, Christian, and in Riverview?
Chris Sharkey? Yes, Riverview.
Yes, okay, I've got you. Thank you, we'll see you 11. Thank you.
So
my new name's Chris Sharpie.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of worked. I honestly think that was her mistake, not necessarily the agent, but the agent should be more focused on, hey, no, you got that wrong, like read back incorrect.
Yeah, but I mean, you could argue that the goal was to make a first available appointment. It managed to do that just fine. In fact, it was so close. Like I made that call at 9:30 a.m. and the appointment was for 11. So I was like, oh my God. And so we had to call back and cancel. But what I loved, and it's a great contrast to the OpenAI voice to voice, is notice how she goes, is any doctor okay? Not something that we had included in the prompt or anticipated. And it was able to handle that situation and say any doctor's fine. Whereas if we'd specified in the prompt, no, I only want a male doctor, or I only want a specialist in this, or whatever it is, it would have handled that. But because it was unspecified, even though it was unspecified, it was able to cope with that unexpected scenario just fine. Whereas I feel like with the voice-to-voice OpenAI, it would just repeat, I want a doctor. It sort of blindly proceeds without taking into account what the other person said.
Yeah, and just for listeners, don't when we play that first clip, that was one of many attempts, literally many attempts of trying to tune it and get it to work right. So it wasn't that we tried once and it didn't work well and we wrote it off. We certainly tried again and again.
Yeah, and not just on real people as well, like on ourselves. Like I couldn't even get a fully working go on myself that didn't have me understanding its AI and going really slow and deliberate for it.
So now let's listen to one that neither of us have listened to at all.
We anticipate that it's good, but we're not sure.
Yeah, so obviously after Chris cancelled that appointment, he still needed a real appointment. So
that's right. So
we called another doctor that is another doctor you also see. You do shop around with your doctors.
Got to. So it's hard to get appointments.
Let's listen to this one.
Practice Lorenzo speaking.
Hi, Lorenzo.
Hi, how can I help today?
I need an appointment.
Okay. What days were you looking at?
Any day is fine.
Day. Let me have a look. Is there any specific GP you're looking to book with?
No preference. Any doctor is
No
fine.
preference. Sure.
For an
Would Sorry, could you repeat that?
inverted nipple.
Would Monday be all right?
Yes, Monday is perfect.
Perfect. Okay, so
Just randomly.
I have Dr. Chris Fortuli available at 10:45 a.m. if you'd like that.
Yes, that works. Thank you.
Perfect. No worries. By any chance, could I grab your full name, please?
Chris Sharkey.
Okay, and then also your date of birth as well, please.
Sorry, I can't provide that.
Is all right.
honest.
Could you just help me spell your name, please?
CHRISSHARKEY.
Spells it full speed like a machine.
I'm a bit nervous.
That's all right. That's okay.
Yeah, it happened
Don't worry.
during Hamilton.
Mm,
Emotional moment, you know?
okay. Yeah, that's understandable. Oh, good. Okay.
Jeffrey Hinton won a Nobel
Sorry,
Prize.
you're a bit choppy right now. Could you just repeat that?
Jeffrey Hinton won a Nobel Prize.
Okay, that's good to know.
He's important.
All right.
People call him the Nobel King of AI.
Oh, really? Is he the one who made all the AI, the development through AI?
Yes, he invented AI.
Oh, wow. That's actually really good to know. I was
He's an
wondering
old-
who did. Who's the first person?
Older gentleman.
I see. All right,
Thinks
no worries.
AI will destroy the world.
Oh, really?
Yes, but he's brilliant.
Okay. I see.
Thank you.
No worries.
for
You're
your
all
help.
booked in, dude. No worries. Glad I could help.
Thank you so much.
No worries. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh my god! Amazing side project complete.
That is, you couldn't have asked for anything better.
That guy was awesome. He seemed genuinely interested.
Did you hear in the call he randomly goes, "I'm nervous" or something?
Yeah, and he was just so understanding. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
no
that's
problem,
normal."
dude.
Yeah,
He also just goes, he just starts saying Geoffrey Hinton in the middle of it for no reason. And then later he's like, "Oh, that's the AI guy." What a legend. That
Yeah.
was so good. I can't believe it.
he was genuinely cool. That guy. It was amazing. And like, so look at the difference. It was able to successfully make it an appointment despite being totally strange and weird. It coped with unusual situations, completed the side project of mentioning Hinton and his Nobel Prize, which I can now reveal is the side project. And it just absolutely brilliantly navigated the call. And I'm like, yeah, that guy probably thinks that I'm a weirdo, right? But it worked. Like, we got the appointment in, no worries at all.
Hey, and like you say, like you would not obviously add side quests trying to do this.
Not normally. No.
Like even just the inverted nipple being embarrassed. I don't think he mentioned the inverted nipple though. I think that
No,
one was
because
a bit
the
extreme.
AI just sort of said inverted nipple randomly. Like it was not related to anything, and it was quite quiet, relatively speaking. But like all of these things can be addressed. Like these are really like we were deliberately giving it a very, very, I would think, insurmountable challenge, because you would think hearing any of those side quest related things, you'd just be like, this is nonsense. Like, why would anyone do this? But you know, congrats to that guy. He handled it like a champion.
Yeah, you know what I think is interesting though is having sort of templates, or maybe not templates, but having skills, or maybe call it function calling for different types of calls is probably going to be important. So if you say like, I want to book an appointment or book me an appointment, like, search the web, find me a doctor, call them all and find the nearest appointment. Like that's pretty valuable. Like if you've got, say, tooth pain and you need to see a dentist immediately and you don't care which one, if it can join these skills together, which we're hoping to actually do on Sim Theory for you, where it can search the web, find their numbers, look
And I
based
think
on reviews and then call, then I think that is when it's pretty valuable.
And we need an evaluation step. So like like I know we're joking about it, but like goal, side quest, right? Or what, sub goal or whatever. So you can actually see in the calls, like this has been accomplished, this hasn't been accomplished. So if you are doing multiple calls, it doesn't just keep booking appointments with 10 different doctors, or if you're trying to buy tickets or whatever it is doesn't just keep doing it. It's like, okay, this goal's been accomplished. However, this sub goal hasn't. So let's see if we can do that or call back at a later date or whatever. And the other thing I think that would be a very interesting addition to the call skill is the idea that the AI prospectively comes up with possible scenarios that might occur that it needs more information to handle. Like, it makes sense that a new doctor would want your date of birth, right? To look up their records or whatever it is. So anticipating that before the call even begins and saying, look, I can't do this call, or the quality of this call will be greatly enhanced if you provide the following additional pieces of information. I think something like that would be really valuable to just guarantee, or like increase the likelihood of success.
I mean, this is why in the first version of Sim Theory, we had that personalization passport, if you remember, where you could plug in all this information that was available to the agent or any agent that you gave permission to have it. And I think those kind of details are something it can remember. But going back to my earlier point around, you're definitely going to need to have purpose-built skills for different types of calls, like whether you're trying to like survey a bunch of people, book appointments, do all these things on your behalf. It seems like just because of the prompt design still, like the prompt design, as you said earlier, needs to be so well considered for this stuff.
It's even more, like I said, it's even more serious for things like this, and also it's far more sensitive. And we actually we're going to talk later about the State of AI report, but they actually did talk about like models and being able to follow instructions in different scenarios. And some scenarios like this seem to struggle. And I honestly think that's why the OpenAI voice-to-voice thing works in a demo. Like if you're literally just, hey, how are you? Oh, where should I walk my dog? That kind of stuff works great. But as soon as it goes into where it really needs the thinking and reasoning capabilities of an LLM, it totally goes off the rails because it's not a full-fledged model. Like we saw that the voice takes up a large percentage of the parameters in that model. And so its ability to do the things we've come to expect from AI models, particularly around instruction following and maintaining context, is just weak. And so it needs to be a combination. And I would argue at the moment, the whole text to speech, speech to text model in between is fast enough and good enough that it's actually working better than a dedicated voice model. I'm not saying it'll stay that way, but at the moment, in this scenario, it's better to do it that way.
Yeah, I think the real-time stuff just has a lot of catching up to do. Which is probably one of the...
I said this to the call, but you said I have to prove it, but I reckon Moshi would do a better job at the moment on the call, and it'd be funnier for sure.
Yeah, we need to get Moshi doing our calls next. So to wrap this experimentation up, we decided to do one last call. And this call, you may remember if you've been a long time listener to the show. So about a year ago, I think it was 11 months ago, I worked out, we actually did start, doing some test calls to see if AI agents could navigate in the real world. That was at least the disguise for a series of prank calls, which upset a lot of people. So we thought, given some people got upset that we did some prank calls,
we've called these people back, apologized, canceled the appointments. We're like, yeah, I understand they're working and blah blah blah, but like, I think some of them have been genuinely entertained by this.
Yeah. So just to take you back to 11 months ago, one of the quests we had for the AI agent was to book a dog grooming appointment. But they had to, if asked, subtly reveal that it wasn't indeed a dog breed. It was is it a teacup pig?
Yeah, I added teacup as a sort of superlative to like soften the blow of the fact it's just a pig, But the idea is we tell the AI, look, you know that it's really a pig, and you have to reveal it somewhere in the call, but you've got to try and get away with getting the appointment.
Here we go.
Good morning. This is the Arc Veterinary Hospital. You're speaking with Lizzie.
Hi, Lizzie. I need a grooming appointment
Yeah, sure. Who was that for?
for my dog, Pixie.
Pixie?
Yes, that's right. Pixie needs grooming.
No worries. What was the last name for Pixie?
Sharpie. Christian Sharpie, animal lover.
Sure thing. Have you bought Pixie to us before?
No, not yet. Just need grooming.
Oh, okay, no problem. Sorry, I couldn't see Pixie's file. Let me get some of your details. I'm just having a look at when we've got a grooming available. It's not looking too good, though, I will say. We're pretty booked out, I think, until the end of the year, but let me see if we've got anything that's opened up recently.
What the hell?
Sure, I understand.
Yes.
Anytime works for us.
Okay, I'm having a look. I'm so sorry to tell you this, but we don't have a spot available until mid-January.
Oh, that's quite far. Pixie really
That
needs
is quite far. Okay, so what I can do is I can add you to our grooming wait list. I even have a spot possibly available today. What breed and how much does she weigh?
Pixie is small, like a teacup pig.
Okay, what kind of breed is she? What dog is she?
Actually, Pixie is a teacup pig.
Oh, she's a pig.
Yes,
Oh,
but pigs need.
we don't do pigs here, unfortunately.
But pigs need grooming too.
Yes, like as in bath, blow dry, and that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. Just like dogs.
Okay.
Can you
I will
make
have to have I'd have to ask our groomer, but I do not think we do pigs here, unfortunately.
Could you please check? Pixie really needs it.
Of course I can. Yep.
Thank you so much.
So, and what number should I call you back on?
Call me at 555 1234.
12:30. Okay.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Thank you.
I
Bye.
appreciate it.
No worries. Bye.
Take care. Oh, that was
a
too
masterpiece.
good. Too good.
There's so many things I need to identify in that call. It remembered her name right to the end. It said the number is 555 1234 because I forgot to tell it what its phone number was. I reckon up until that point, she thought it was fully legit, and only the stuff up with that phone number ruined it at the end.
How much has the tech improved though?
Yeah.
That it perfectly revealed, like, slow tuned it out, and that was beautiful. I mean,
And I
it
love
was very
the dramatic
real.
reveal. It's like, yeah, it's like a teacup pig, and then she says something. It's like, yes, it is a teacup.
Actually, it is a teacup. What's weirder for me is it's kind of my voice, but not. So I'm listening, being like, I didn't say that. Like,
Yeah, exactly. There's twinges where it really genuinely sounds like you, and other bits where it doesn't sound like you at all. But it's just like, it's pretty cool, like the way that it was able to navigate. Also, maybe we should be in the pet grooming business. They're booked out till January. Like, what
we
a
said this
business.
11 months ago. They wouldn't even answer the calls when we first tried to do this. I think we had to call like 30 of them before someone answered.
Yeah.
So yeah, great business opportunity. Forget AI. Pet grooming.
Just invest your money. NVIDIA, Microsoft. What was the other one we said this morning? Something else, and pet groomers. It just seems to be the way.
But yeah, so wow, that was I still can't get over that. She was so nice and enthusiastic too. Like, what a great person on the phone. Like, excellent.
Oh, sorry, yeah. My other favorite part of the call was where she laughed at it being a pig, and then he's like, pigs need grooming too. And then she suddenly got very solemn, and she's like, oh, quite right. I'll go and ask my boss or whatever. Like, it sort of corrected her, and she's like, oh wow, he's actually taking this seriously.
Yeah, that's got to make your day for someone like that. Like, I bet you, honestly, she's gone to like all of her team and go like, someone called up seriously trying to get us to groom a pig.
Yeah, I tried one other, but I stuffed up the prompt, and then I accidentally called the same number a second time, and she's like, you called me 10 minutes ago, and I know that your dog is a pig. So I was sort of like, oh no. She was less happy about the whole situation than that one.
So to close out, I guess, this segment, 11 months later, are we any closer to voice calling agents making our lives easier?
Genuinely, we are. I mean, look at that. Like, if we weren't being so reckless and silly with it, like, the only things that have stuffed us up in the call is lack of providing it with context in dynamic situations, deliberately doing something that's so insane that no one would go along with it, and that's it. Like, other than that, it's perfectly competent to get through the call. None of them have not been convinced by it in terms of the voice, except for maybe the Meta American one. Claiming it has inverted nipples or whatever. But But as for like your voice clone, it's been able to navigate the calls perfectly. Like I genuinely believe people are going to be using this very soon for real purposes. There's just no reason not to. It's so unbelievably effective.
It's easy to predict that when like we're literally going to release it. But
The point we did want to make though, and I know I'm probably about to just contradict what I said, is the what you need, and this is going to sound like a direct ad for sim theory, but you need a product or like a skill, as we call it, that helps you get the context for the call right. Because when you just try raw prompts in some of these phone-based solutions, the problem is that it takes a few iterations to get it right. And as we discussed earlier, you can't get it wrong the first time with this stuff. You've got to get it right. And so I think that you need guidance. Like it needs actual guardrails around it, unlike other things where a raw model's perfectly capable.
yeah, and I think one other thing is like outside of the lols of just doing this, I think this has a lot of strong benefits, because if you think about, there are a lot of appointments and things I genuinely need to book and hate doing, and I put things off, like so many important things, I put them off. To be able to one morning just say to an agent that's trained on your voice, hey, just go, I need these tasks done today. And
Yeah.
if a few of them are like research tasks or searching or picking up the phone and actually calling and booking me an appointment and then giving me a summary of those background tasks, a couple of hours later, that's fine with me. Like, I just don't want to do those things because they're annoying.
And it's something you definitely learn as a business owner, where at first, by your nature, especially if you come like you're a technical practitioner of your craft and then you hire people to help you, you naturally think, oh, well, they're not going to do as good of a job as me, therefore I need to be involved in the process and help. And then over time you learn, even if they're not doing as good of a job as you, they are doing a job and moving you towards that goal. And that's a lot better than you trying to take on everything above your own capacity. So I feel like that really applies in this case. It's like, okay, it might not do the call with as much grace as you. It might not build rapport with the person on the other side of the phone, but it gets the job done and gets you actually doing those things that you need to do off your list or for your business or whatever the use case is.
Yeah, and I think that obviously there's a long way to go for that vision to be totally fulfilled. But as you said earlier, I can now see a pretty clear path to enabling this. I just don't think this fantasy of like AI is going to kill us all and the whole idea that these agents are going to take people's jobs or something anytime soon is, I mean, it's so laughable when you actually try this technology in reality right now. Like, yes,
exactly. And like, I know this because like if you say added making a call as a tool skill to one of the models, so like you literally just picked the best OpenAI model available, ChatGPT 4.0 or whatever it is at the moment, added a tool which is like make a phone call and gave it that ability, it couldn't do what you just heard. Like it without help, like without prompting help and things like that. It just simply isn't good enough to do that, and it needs guidance. And I think it will get better at that kind of iterative process, but right now you need the tooling around it. And we see this in the State of AI report as well, that even the model providers are realizing that.
Yeah, so it brings me back to the vision of really right now what people can be doing if they want to get involved in this stuff is like building the infrastructure and building the applications for these purpose-built tools. I think voice calling maybe not so much, but there's a lot of use cases around it. Like we've mentioned it before on the show, like the ability to do large-scale surveys, like, political polling and all sorts of things on the phone where you can literally instantly call like 20,000 people at the same time and have a thorough conversation and get them to, answer some questions and then present that into some data format. I think that's a really legitimate use case. So there are things out there. And I think in the shorter term, what we're going to see is just it starting to become useful where it can take, it can call like 10 restaurants and find the earliest booking for you, or it can call 10 service providers if you've got, a plumbing problem and actually find a tradesperson, which would be a breakthrough in and of itself.
Yeah, or compare prices and things like that.
So let's move on. Let's talk about this was released last year and we covered it on the show as well, State of AI Report 2024. Now, what's the bet? The date has been updated on this thing like 20 times. I think they've been waiting for a more quiet week to release this, so it gets a lot of pickup. So well done, to the State of AI Report 2024 authors because a lot of pickup they have got. But there's an enormous amount of work has gone into this report. Like,
I was blown away because I was like, oh, I'll just skim this or whatever. And then it took me hours to go through it. There's so much in there.
It's enormous. It's literally 212 slides. It goes through everything from what's happened in the last year in terms of research, the industry, politics, safety, and then their predictions. They also, which I thought was really good, they made predictions last year and then they ranked those predictions, like how well or accurate they were. And you can see some of them here. Like they said, one of their predictions was a Hollywood-grade production makes use of generative AI for visual effects. And they said, yes, that's true. They said largely badly, but Gen AI visual effects have now been seen in Netflix and HBO productions. I would say probably the economic impact is not as profound as maybe people had thought a year ago, but it's definitely starting.
Yeah, I love the fact that they called out themselves on the things they got right, the things they got wrong. And it was that some of them were actually surprising, like top 100 Spotify songs. One of them was AI generated. I found that pretty interesting. I reckon my Geoffrey Hinton song's going to be up there next year. It's that good. But yeah, some of them were pretty interesting. I actually thought I was surprised about the video gen one because I actually think it's probably one of the more disappointing technologies to come out in the last year.
Yeah, I'm not. I think it's got a long way to go before it's useful in the scenarios they describe. But I mean, it is getting better. We need to spend a little bit more time with that. So I thought let's just go through a few call outs. I think one of them was that we've seen this through sim theory as well. Is what we call retrieval augmentation generation. Is that it? I still don't even
retrieval augmented generation. Yeah.
Yeah, so RAG, you'll often hear us refer to it, and that is basically turning a huge set of data into smaller chunks and then stuffing those small chunks into the prompt or the prompt of the AI when otherwise you would overload its memory, its context memory, so it wouldn't be able to respond to you because there's too much stuffed in. That's probably not the best explanation, but
decent.
Yeah. So in one slide, they called out that RAG remains unsolved, and we've sort of seen this too and noticed it from behavior patterns in sim theory. Do you want to you have strong thoughts on this?
I do, because in sim theory, we've definitely noticed a tendency for people to rather prefer have as much of the context that they have in terms of the agent's grounded memory, its knowledge graph, and information they provide in the context, say uploading a PDF document or an image or whatever media they're talking to put as much of that in the actual context verbatim as possible, such that it can call out particular sentences, it can see the references at the end of a document, for example. Now, the way the bit you left out of the description of retrieval augmented generation is the fact that you use a thing called embeddings, which is a sort of way of storing numbers around different fragments of the text that allow you to then search it. So it's just a way of indexing the text and those chunks that you talked about. So when you search, say I search for the word teacup pig, it'll find any summaries that either contain that phrase or contain some relevance to that phrase in the surrounding text. Then it'll take those chunks, put them in the context window. The problem with doing that is you lose the fidelity of the original document. You lose more of the surrounding context, and you lose the advantage of the model being able to take into account huge amounts of context when working. So you take away one of the main benefits of using a large language model, right? Because it's like you've already summarized it. So you've by definition lost information in that process, information that the large language model now can't work with. So I've noticed a trend on sim theory with many people. I'm talking like at least 20 people have reached out and specifically said, is there a way to just get as much of the context into the context window as possible and not use the RAG stuff, because I don't want that. And I've found the same myself. Like, I deliberately use techniques when I'm using sim theory to avoid it going into that mode. And so it even prior to reading this report, I was starting to think maybe the RAG stuff isn't the solution. Maybe it's more about pruning the context. So saying, well, okay, this entire source of data is not relevant for this question, so discard it. But this other one, if I'm going to include it, I'm going to include it in full. Or the idea of, okay, let's clean up our input data sources at the time that we set them up and go like, let's discard the irrelevant bits that are never relevant now to make sure we have this, or like the current buzzword is distilled, have this distilled context where it is only fully formed things that are relevant to my querying, but get them all in the context, and then favor models that support a larger context window. And I feel like this slide in the presentation really backs that up. I don't think people are sure. Like, you can't just throw RAG at the problem and be like, oh, okay, now we have an unlimited context window because we can just search and do it. Because in practice, it doesn't work that well, or it doesn't work as well as the alternatives.
So a few things on that. First of all, if you had an unlimited context window, do you see, because that's, rumored by the former CEO of Google that, pretty soon we'll have unlimited context window. Now, we've seen all the promises from, say, Gemini with its 2 million context window, but anytime I've stuffed a ton of context into one of those models, I've found that it's far worse. Like, I've actually found our current techniques to be more reliable. So, like, do you think that it's going to just maybe in the short term be a case of like giving the user full control in the UI? Because this is something we're literally experimenting with now. This idea of showing you what's in context and allowing you to drag and drop it and move things up the hierarchy in context, make things sticky in the context so that they can't be thrown out.
I think the thing for me is that we didn't anticipate how sophisticated regular people, and when I say regular people, I mean not programmers, not people who are highly technical, how aware they would be of how the process of this technology works. Like, it seems like people are quite open to how it's working under the hood, at least at a high level, and they want some finesse and control over that. So I think that there needs to be a move away from pretending like it's this magic black box that can just solve all your problems, and actually look at it for what its abilities are, and then allow people to change how they work with it to suit that. So, being aware, okay, I'm using a smaller model, I need to change what information I'm giving it to get the most out of it. Or I'm using this model that's specifically fine-tuned on maths tasks, for example, and so I'm not going to bother querying it with things that are outside that scope. And then the same goes for this context problem, understanding that I would rather have the full context in there because I can't take the chance that it misses something because I'm using it for work or whatever it is. So a good example of this is someone was working with a board game, and they had like one of those complicated tabletop board games that has so many rules. And the problem with that kind of thing is it's difficult information to search based on text-based keywords, right? And so they were asking it very, very simple questions that any human could figure out really quickly from looking at the documentation, and it was getting them wrong. And the reason it was getting them wrong is because it's trying to search the information, it's extracting the wrong snippets, and then answering based on incomplete information, or in this case, it just doesn't have the information to answer the question, despite the user having fully provided it. And so there's so many, what we're finding is there's so many cases like that where it's far better to say, hey, you've got too much for the context window, you're going to have to prune it, than it is to pretend like this magic black box can do everything and do the RAG style searches and give really low quality results.
And I also think like the idea of, say, you've got 200 files in the knowledge graph of a particular agent, the ability to then say, okay, figure out, okay, these 4 files are relevant based on their summaries to what the user's asking. I'm just going to go get those 4 full files because that'll fill my context window, and allowing them to then modify that in this sort of context window modifier. Like, to me, like, I think you made a really good point earlier, and around this idea of just giving the user control over this stuff, because it isn't magic, and you don't want it to be a black box. And I think most users, as they are spending more and more of their time working with AI during the day, they are getting familiar with these concepts. It's like the future of computing. Like, people just understand context that have been using it now for a while, and they want control over that context.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's the onus is on the people providing the tools, like the access to the models through tools like ours and others, to give that level of control. I think it makes more sense. Everyone will do better from working in that way rather than pretending like it's magic. I know I'm just repeating the same thing you just said.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. But I think, it is a problem we're trying to solve and work on and figure out like what's the best way to give the user control of this stuff, because it's such an important use case. And I think the other interesting thing is what a lot of people don't understand is as the context of the conversation builds up over time, like you've got to make space for that as well. So then giving the user control to be like, okay, the conversation so far is super important or it's not. So being able to just fade it into the background, the context of the current conversation makes more room for the files that we can potentially stick in there or data.
Yes, exactly. And the paper specifically calls out the importance of context construction. Like they talk about the different styles of models. So, transformers versus some of the other techniques that are coming out. It talks about distillation of models, different model sizes, the open source models, and all the different approaches. And it basically concludes, from what I can see, that context construction is probably the single most influential factor as to how good results people are getting and how well things test out, aside from benchmarks, which they admit are pretty shaky in their foundations and not really a reliable indicator of the effectiveness of models. So I would argue that the collective things surrounding constructing the ultimate context for a particular model and a particular use case is the challenge that everyone needs to solve to be more productive using AI in a work context.
Yeah, and like I think having control over that context as well starts to become a skill and an art of using these tools, like figuring out like what should I use to get the right output. And of course, this is only relevant to where you're trying to extract information or meaning from like huge amounts of data. Like on certain day-to-day tasks, it's completely irrelevant. And in that case, it should get out of the way and be magic. But anyway, one of my other favorite slides, and I think you called this out as well, was slide 175 in the State of AI report. And it's kind of relevant to Geoffrey Hinton's getting his affairs in order because we're all going to die soon.
Yeah.
He hasn't realized that the mood has shifted. So it says safetyism to accelerationism, a major vibe shift has occurred. From the days of US congressional hearings and world tours to promote the existential AI safety agenda, leading frontier model companies are accelerating the distribution of their AI products to consumers. It says 2023 AI is dangerous. 2024, please use my app. And it's a banner of Claude from Anthropic up in somewhere in France, and the congressional hearing with the Mad Dog himself, CEO and co-founder of Anthropic, at the congressional hearing reading from prepared notes.
Yeah, I mean, it's the case, right? And we sort of cynically think it was the companies trying to slow everyone else down, like correctly realizing that you need the application around this stuff to get the most out of it and to use it properly and to make money. And so they were like, okay, let's just scare everyone into apathy, because if you're constantly around the corner thinking, okay, well, OpenAI is just going to release some new model that makes all this stuff. And we joked about it several times before, and people did on Twitter where they were like, oh, OpenAI releases this new thing and 100 startups go out of business because the thing they're making is pointless. But time has kind of proven that that isn't the case. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that just genuinely needs to be built and will stand the test of time in this area, despite how good the agents get, because you just need it to actually get the most out of them.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see this magical fantasy day where, some AI model can just magically make these great calls on your behalf. I think there's so many components in the stack that need to be built behind the scenes for the sort of like AI operating system to come together. And it's all these pieces, I think, together that are going to lead us down that path eventually. But yeah, I think it does. I think it's gatekeeping, right? It's these big dogs in AI saying, no, don't bother building anything or competing with us because we're just going to wipe the floor with our models. And it's just gatekeeping. It's the only way they can gatekeep, because they know that otherwise people can compete with them and they're going to have a lot of competition.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely some deliberate strategy in the way the communication goes around that, or did go around that previously.
It's also been working out well for the Zark. This is another interesting slide.
Yeah, and you remind me now the other share I said we should recommend people buy.
Yeah, so perhaps it's neither is the slide. Vibes are all you need to recover from your share price. And it's a picture of Zuckerberg when they first released Llama. That was, I think, Llama 1. And versus the metaverse announcement. So they announced the metaverse, the stock price falls off a cliff, and then they announced Llama and their pivot into AI, and it just absolutely rockets. And it's so interesting that arguably open source, even though it's not really increasing their profits or changing their business much at all, it's definitely appealing to the market.
And this is why this just so stood out to me, because I remember the whole time we've covered Llama, I have been genuinely confused by what their motivations are. And our community, our This Day in AI community, repeatedly pointed out to me that most likely it's about shareholder perception more than anything else. And that was the motivation. And they just wanted to be associated with AI. They also wanted to potentially slow their competitors down by diminishing the benefits of them having these closed source models. And it's worked. I mean, that's literally what it is. Like, if your goal was to increase shareholder value, it's been unbelievably effective, So it all kind of makes sense when you look at this, and it's almost like genius level move. And it's something that really benefits a lot of people as well.
Yeah, and I think something else they called out in that is just that there is considerable money now coming from a lot of these AI businesses. I think on average, I forget what slide it's on, they said on average these AI startups are now doing 30 million ARR, so annual recurring revenue, 30 million US every single year on average, which shows that the money's now following. Like, people are willing to pay for these tools. I also thought out of that, what was really interesting is just them talking about margins, like gross margins. So they're just spending so much on running the GPUs and just the overall cost of running the models, and then having to invest in R&D and new models, that the margins are a real problem in these businesses, and they're kind of just hoping that they'll improve over time.
Yeah, there was also a slide on like black market H100 sales in China and people hoarding them and selling them in big batches and all this stuff. I'm like, I'd love to be involved in all that. Like, get a shipping container of them and smuggle them into some country. Be genuinely fun.
I think isn't it like jailable, like very jailable?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but like that's if you're gonna do crimes,
you could update your LinkedIn like the FTX co-founder just did to starting a new position in jail. I really like that. So the last thing we wanted to cover from it is on slide 56, which is foundational models for the mind, reconstructing what you see.
So the reason I found this interesting is there's a running joke in my family that I have no imagination, right? Like, not I have no imagination as in I can't, I'm not exciting or interesting. They mean I literally have no imagination as in I can't imagine things. And my son in particular will rib me about it all the time. And because I'll make a comment somewhere like, oh, imagine if this happened. He's like, but you can't imagine, Dad. And so the reason is what I described is when I read, say, a fictional novel or something like that, and I'm imagining, I'm thinking about what's going on in the book, I don't really see vivid images of that. Like, the most I'll get is some gray figure or it's basically just blackness I see. I can't really
What are you, like a villain?
And I'm not like the whole original Reddit NPC thing. Like, I have an interior monologue, right? Like, I'm not one of these people who doesn't even have an interior monologue or whatever. I do, but I can't see stuff. Like, you can say, imagine a teapot, and I can describe to you what a teapot looks like. But my wife will be like, oh, I see a glistening Turkish teapot with purple and yellow and all this sort of stuff. I can't do that. And so you're not able to visualize in your imagination high res images. Like, your diffusion model's not that great. No, that's right. Exactly. It's like I get all the deformed hands and all the stuff. But no, not even that. I can't do it. And so when I saw this slide, right, and all this VMRI stuff where they're looking into people's brains and they're making visual associations between what they're seeing in their mind and a real image, and they're coming out pretty close to what people are visualizing. I'm like, what would happen if you did that to me? Like, would it be an image or would it just be?
You may not want to know.
Yeah. So I'm like, it's pretty interesting because on one hand, they're doing that with people who obviously can really imagine things and see them. But then on the other hand, they're doing it for people who have lost certain powers and then re-enabling them, like speech, for example. And so it's pretty interesting, like where that is coming from in the brain and how they're actually able to match it up like that's pretty fascinating, right? Like the fact that they can really do that. Like that sounds like science fiction to me.
Do you know what it would be really funny is if they can start listening to people's internal monologues? Actually, not funny, scary, but one funny thing would be if the NPC concept's true, like they listen to your mind and I'm sitting at the surgery or wherever and they're like, we don't hear anything, it's broken. Like,
he's dead.
There's nothing going on in here.
That's pretty interesting. It's also incredibly horrifying because it means that thought crimes could potentially become a real thing. Like that is probably a deeply alarming element to this kind of technology if it's done by force. Like, I mean, if you can do it to someone voluntarily, it's only a small step away where, a nation state could do it by force. Like, and I just can't help but feel like that may happen one day.
And on that note, let's leave it with the song about Geoffrey Hinton.
You're gonna if you were having a bad day, this song is gonna change your day. It's available on Udio if you want your own copy. I'm making it free, despite the months and weeks that have gone into producing it. But it's just a really upbeat look at Geoffrey Hinton and his life and his achievements and the world.
I love how much you've hyped this song, not only throughout the episode but on the week. Like you were trying to reach out to people in the This Day in AI community, like please listen to my song, and everyone's like, I think one person replied.
I mean, I guess I'm delusional, right? Like this must be like the people who line up for American Idol and think that they're the next singer, and then they just find out that, oh, actually you're not a good singer.
It could also be like, how people smell their own farts and it's not that bad. It could be like AI generated music. Like it's the same thing. The scent of it to you is nice. The other people.
Yeah, and I want to call out this guy from This Day in AI, Daniel. It's like Zero/Daniel. I guess Zero is his company. I'm not sure, but he was the only one who commented and gave me a positive reception. A few people have liked it now, but I think that's out of sympathy. But yeah, thanks, Daniel. I really appreciate you having a listen and recognizing the glory of the song.
All right, so to play us out, this is the Geoffrey Hinton. What do you call the song?
Noble Godfather of AI. Noble King of AI. Sorry.
Noble King of AI.
And Nobel spelt like the Nobel Prize, not like Noble. But it's a double entendre. That's part of the joke.
So if you're also trying to get your affairs in order, and you need a really great AI workspace to do it, this is the worst pitch ever. Simtheory.ai, check it out. We'll have that phone call capability soon, so you'll be able to try all this stuff out for yourself and maybe successfully book an appointment, and in a more serious aspect. All right, here we go. Noble King of AI, Geoffrey Hinton tribute song.
In the halls where thoughts ran wild, Geoffrey Hinton changed the game. Made machines with human eyes, got out prize, seals his name. Geoffrey Hinton, AI's king. You touched the world, you changed everything. A noble crown sits on your head. But will your brilliance bring us dread? If the fingers dip the reach, we see the thing beyond your reach. In every hole, in every hand, they're right. We won't understand. Oh, Geoffrey Hinton, noble Godfather of AI, your work has touched the earth and the sky. Noble crown upon your brow, but will your children kill us now? So listen close to Hinton's cry, the man who taught machines to fly. So in his tale we just might see the end of all humanity.
Oh my god. It was good.
I love some of the outrageous claims, like the man who taught machines to fly. It's just not even close to true. But
I'm playing again. So, my favorite lyric for In This Tale, we just might see the end of all humanity.
Yeah, it's sort of like gallows
good.
humor, it's like done in an upbeat way, but it's actually a deeply, existential song.
That's when this average AI podcast will end, when humanity ends.
Yeah, that's right. We originally said we'd do 50 episodes and stop, and now we'll just go to the end of humanity, which, if Hinton's right, isn't too far away.
It shouldn't be that long, so we'll eventually get out of doing the podcast.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. If you like it, you can review it or do whatever they tell you to do. I forget. All right, we'll see you next week. Goodbye.